Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Old Hunt, where we are still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne. We are playing through version 1.00 of the Japanese release, and last time we encountered an undying queen, who was supposedly the subject of a raid of the executioners, forced the leader to become a quote-unquote blessed anchor, which is a very strange concept, but we know what it means instinctively because we encountered him. Martyr Ligarius defeated him. I think that was before last time. It all runs together because of the way I'm recording these episodes now. But anyway, having taken care of that, I told you I'd be going off into the Chalice Dungeons, and you may have noticed there's something a little different about my character now. So let's go ahead and give you a quick recap, show you where I am now. I went through I finished Lower Tumaru, and I did all of Ailing Loran, and now I am into Lower Loran, and I have created the Defiled Chalice Dungeon, although I haven't gone through it yet. Taking my time on that one. It's famously very difficult if you're not in the know. Anyway, I've now, because of doing the Chalice Dungeons, been able to really bolster my stats up to probably where they should be if I hadn't, invested everything in other weird points that I could use lots of weapons. So my Vitality getting close to 40 here. We're at 39. My Arcane is at 40, which is good. And as you should probably already know how the other stats look because I haven't really changed them. And when I say that, I mean I haven't changed them at all. Okay, good. I just wanted to verify that for myself, but haven't really done much to influence them. Also, I've noticed, finally, that you can see what runes I have equipped, both visually and you can see a list of their effects in the sort of upper right-hand corner of the screen there, except for the last one. You don't get that effect, but you can see visually what it is. But that's fine. We're going to be looking at the final description anyway. So the first rune I have equipped is the Moon Rune, same as always. Second one is the one that adds 3 blood vials to my maximum, and then the last one is max HP up. I talked about when I switched to that rune. So the runes haven't changed. Also, my cumulative level is now level 92, which is higher than it probably needs to be to finish the game, but that's okay. This is what happens when you do the Chalice Dungeons in a single playthrough of new game. You get way over-leveled for where the game is. They expected you to pace out the Chalice Dungeons in various levels of New Game Plus cycles. And it works really well. Right? The first time I ever played this game, 10 years ago, I went through and I wanted to get each ending in its own New Game cycle, right? So New Game, I got ending 1. New Game Plus, I got ending 2. New Game Plus 2, I got ending 3. It always throws me off how people count New Game Plus cycles. So I did them all in order, so you could see the sense of the increase that I was doing in terms of numbers. But I've heard New Game Plus be referred to as New Game Plus 2. It gets very confusing to me. Anyway, I played through the game 3 times, and in doing each one, was going further and further down into the chalices, and finally got to the very end, at some point in playthrough number either 3 or 4, I can't remember. It's been 10 years. But I got there eventually, and the experience was pretty smooth. Because as long as you know where the breakpoints are, you can do things. What I've done now is what I tend to do, what started to do since, which is you can sort of jumpstart if you've got a weapon that's really good at killing beasts. You can jumpstart your levels, as I've done now, by going through the Loran chalices, because they're populated with tons of beasts. They're not the only enemies down there, but they are the primary enemies down there. And so that's, if you've got a beast killer weapon that's really good at taking out beasts, you can deal with most of the challenges that Loran can throw at you, and you just get gobs and gobs of blood echoes, which allows you to level up and sort of hit the new level curve for that chalice dungeon pretty fast. And then you can keep up with the higher level chalices and keep going that way. So that's the version of me that you're doing. But in the course of those explorations, you'll note that I have a new weapon. This is not the weapon that I needed my strength up to 24, but since I was doing all the stuff in the chalices, I figured, I got the weapon. Let's give it a use. Let's give it a try. And so we're going to go ahead and read that. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out which description I want to start with. I think it makes sense to start with the weapon. That's the thing that's sort of changed the most here. So let's go ahead and go to the weapons screen so I don't accidentally unequip it, as I almost did there. And we can see here we have the Beast Claw. I have it up to +6 because, as I was saying also recently, once you start requiring Bloodstone chunks to upgrade your weapons, the investment becomes much steeper, especially in version 1.00. So I've only taken it to +6. I'm hoping that the powerful physical boosting blood gems that I've gotten in the chalices are going to be enough to sort of carry me over and make up the difference. Also, the fact that I'm over leveled. And for some reason, I have 20 in strength on an arcane build. But we're not going to think too hard about that. Anyway, we're here for the description. So the title of this, I think Beast Claw is perfect. Literally it could be like nails of a beast. But I don't know. I don't like that. It doesn't sound very good, does it? The beast nails, not quite the same. The beast claw, right? That really gives you a sense that this is like something that you can sort of hold in your hand. Also, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but it will. There is another reason, a visual reason, why I think beast claw is perfect for this. But anyway, it's time to get on to the actual description here. Okay, beast weapon used by apostate Izzy. I think the official translation used irreverent Izzy. I've talked about that before. There is the possibility that it is like a weapon for a beast, but as we keep reading the description, I think it'll make sense why it's a beast weapon. So let's do that. Let's move on to the second portion here. So the first line of the second section and the second line of the second section there all sort of run together to modify the word weapon, buki, and then we're getting the subject like identifying particle wa. So all of that up to the word weapon is being modified. It's all modifying the word weapon. So here we go. This weapon, which consists of isn't literally in the Japanese, but I think it's very strongly implied, I'm just going to say it now so that I'll have some way of making sense of the sentence, and then you can see what I mean. This weapon, which consists of stealing the long bones of an abominable, undying dark beast, or literally black beast, and shaving them, right? I think the idea is you carve them down. As you can see, they've sort of been carved to a point, and binding them, right? That's all modifying this weapon. So this weapon, which is the long bones of an abominable, undying dark beast that have been stolen, shaved down, and bound together, is, right? That's all identifying the subject. But at the same time, right, because, again, Japanese structures its grammar differently than English structures its grammar. So the idea, like, you would ideally try and break up some of this information and present it in a different form if you weren't, just quickly looking at the Japanese and trying to provide a literal translation like I am now. Let's continue on to the final line in this second section here. Okay, so I'm just going to shorten everything that went before and say this weapon is still alive, and by means of release, guides the user to temporary beasthood, right? A temporary state of beasthood. So all of that, right? The whole second section really belongs all together because we're getting the first two lines, which are all modifying the subject into one thing, and then the final line there, right? So this weapon, which consists of the long bones stolen from an undying, abominable dark beast, shaven down and then bound together, is still alive, and when unleashed, guides the user to a temporary state of beasthood. Whew! Boy, that's a lot to hold in your head. It's interesting for me to be doing this playthrough where I'm trying to provide some form of translation. I've been skewing literal, and in part that's just because of habit. That's just because when I do Translation Born, I provide literal translations so that people can see the incredible work that goes into crafting the really well done English versions. For the most part, like by and large, I think very well crafted, very carefully thought out, well done translations. And you can really appreciate that by looking at the literal version and then I hope in Translation Born I can provide a useful additional perspective in explaining why I think some of the really cool moves the translators make are so cool. There's no reason for me not to be trying to make those super cool moves myself when I'm doing this playthrough, but I find it's very difficult to do that when you're just looking at the Japanese, and not just that, you're not writing anything down. Right? When I'm working, I can write this down, I can process it bit by bit, and I can rearrange the information, and I can end up with something that sounds, to my mind, very smooth, very nice, right? I can, I think, do a pretty good job as a translator. And it's a different experience just looking at the Japanese here, and not being able to have anything to write down to, like, store the information temporarily for me to, like, reference and come back to. I'm gaining a new appreciation for people who do, because I've done interpretation before in like a seminar setting. I've never done it in a professional setting. And I know it's really draining and you have to take a lot of notes because, again, when you're taking notes, it helps you sort of offload some of the information that the Japanese is front loading that you need to move around a little bit to make sound normal in English. Either that, or you have to be very, very quick and very, very just sort of literal so that people can get a sense for what's being said, even if the final message that you deliver isn't like 100% comprehensible, right? There's a difference between providing interpretation where someone makes a statement and then stops, and providing continuous, continuous interpretation. There's a better term for it, but I'm not going to try and remember it now. There's a difference between those two styles. And one of the big differences is you don't have time to do all the different like modifiers and parse them all out yourself. You just give the raw sort of information as you're processing it to the person who's listening in the other language. And then they have to think for themselves and like put it all together so that the statements that you're giving them make sense, right? Maybe you'll do a little bit of processing if it's helpful, but like, you just can't. If the input that you're getting in the other language is constantly coming at you, you need to be constantly outputting input to a listener. So it makes it that much harder. It's a different job. And it's doing this playthrough is really emphasizing to me the difference between the normal work environment that I work in, where I get to write things down, and trying to do all this on the fly. Because I'm just trying to work out like literal versions to give you. That's sort of what this playthrough has turned into in large part. And it's not necessarily what I set out to do, but it's what I found myself doing. And I think that's interesting because of the natural sort of pressures to how difficult it is to process all this Japanese, all these long strings of modifiers and things without being able to process it more effectively. Anyway, I think I've said that like 5 times by now. So let's move on. Let's come back to the description here. These living long bones of a dark beast that have been strapped together to form into a weapon by Irreverent Izzy. Also, Irreverent Izzy, the one who gave us the beast roar, right? Which channels the user's own vocal cords to create an effect that, you know, protects you from projectiles and causes enemies to like get flinched back a little bit, right? It's this, you've seen it in action. I've done it in the playthrough. Not very often because I'm not very good at those sorts of hunter tools, but I have done it. And this is the same thing, right? So we're seeing a tie between Irreverent Izzy, Apostate Izzy, right? You can see that this is someone who's turned their back on the church because the church forbids things that are related to beasthood, right? Think back to the beast rune and how that was like one of the first forbidden runes. Well, Irreverent Izzy, Apostate Izzy, you know, the guy who abandoned the church, he went full straight down into beasthood and made that his specialty because he's got the beast roar and he's got the beast claw to his name. And I'm sort of suspecting that Irreverent Izzy's end was probably transformed into some sort of beast and then succumbed, right? And so maybe got hunted down at some point, right? I think some of the hunters here that we read about may or may not have come to natural ends, but Irreverent Izzy, I don't think, is one of the people that might have made it out. Anyway, let's move on to the very final section here. Okay, the very final section is pretty familiar. This is the same sort of thing that we've seen on the Beast Blood pellet, because it's the same effect, right? So beasthood is increased by attacks as wounds are split open into flesh and blood spatters back, right? I've given this sort of version before, right? The idea is, you go into this state of beasthood where you're just yearning for the destruction of flesh and the You want to see blood fly everywhere, and right, you're just dealing as much damage as you can, and sort of ties in with the idea of visceral attacks, where you sort of reach into the opponent and then grab like an internal organ attack, right? Very literally, grab their internal organs and then you pull them out, maybe do some sort of major attack in there, and how those are said to be sort of a darker aspect of hunter, darker hunter techniques. So beasthood is absolutely leaning into these sort of darker techniques. And anyway, we're also seeing the other side of beasthood in the final line here, because by continuing to do that, you reach greater power and pleasure. Or greater power and pleasure is likely brought about to the user, if we want to be literal. But that whole final section, right, is just sort of establishing a tie to the state of beasthood that you get when using these weapons and the beast blood pellet effect. So, interesting way to use this weapon. And here we have it. We have it in its untransformed state. In its untransformed state, I mean, it's nothing special, right? It does have a nice little backstab there. Oh, I'm out of stamina. Also, I should say, I've never used this weapon before. Like, you have to wait so long before you get it in the chalices that it hardly feels worth it. But anyway, I do have it on, and we've got these medium speed attacks, I would say. Like, this is not, I don't think, as fast as that stake driver was. Just sort of my primary point of comparison. But, it's not bad, I suppose. And in the one-handed form, you can still parry with it. Other interesting thing about it, let me try and get the right angle. There we go. You can see that it's sort of like got a gauntlet that extends back over the wrist, and there's like a handle that you can hold in the middle there, and you just sort of swing these bones, these whittled down bones of a dark beast, and you can attack things with it. That is not remarkable. The remarkable thing about it is how it's still alive, and you can really appreciate that when you transform it. And you can sort of hear the grounded, like, beasthood state that we've just entered. And here we go. Look at this claw on my offhand here. I no longer have a gun in it. It has transformed. So, and this arm has transformed. Both of my arms are now beast arms. So the beasthood has really crept into me. It's like a partial transformation, right? And you can take this to even greater heights, depths. I don't know what it would be. I think it would probably actually be depths in the DLC, and with a rune. But we're not gonna talk too much about that. Comparison's the thief of joy, as they say. But we do now. We're a lot faster, and we attack again and again and again and again. Look at us go! Yeah, tear through flesh, spatter blood. What's the R2 like? Oh, interesting. It's with the claw, like, and this is the visual reason I was talking about, by the way, where I was saying there's another reason why I think beast claw is a great translation for it. You transform it, you really get a beast's claw, and in fact, that's the one that you attack with. It's a sinister R2. See, normally I would expect the R button to attack with my right hand, like this does here, and the L button, oh, that was transformed. What does L2 do? The L2 I would expect to attack with my left hand, but it instead attacks with both. Untransformed, that's how I fire my gun. But interesting. Okay, okay, that's the quick version. Cool. Right, anyway, so we've got that going on, and we're almost ready to head out. Maybe you shouldn't have. This is going to be another very, like, front-loaded episode. Maybe the other description will be super easy. I don't know. Who am I kidding? Here we have the Ritual Impurity rune. The Corruption rune, right? You can sort of see the tie, feel the spreading corruption burn, right? So I personally don't have much of a problem with calling this Corruption. I think it hangs together in the official translation. There are some people in the Bloodborne lore community who have reasons for not being fans of this. But again, Canehurst, not exactly my strong suit in terms of, like, lore understanding. So, I don't know. I can tell you that literally this is Kegare, right? This is, like, ritually impure or unclean. And that ties in with the ritually impure blood clan, right? So it's associated with the Vilebloods, and I can tell you that the Japanese is more cohesive on that front, but I personally, when I read the English translation, don't feel like there's a lot of cohesion that's being left out. I feel like this is the Cainhurst rune that you get from Annalise, the Queen of the Vilebloods herself, and she's got blood that she herself is calling corrupt. That's another thing, which has nothing to do necessarily with this description, but that's always been surprising to me, is that you hear the church talk about the corrupted Vilebloods, and yeah, that makes sense. They hate those people. The Annalise calls her own blood corrupted, right? Feel the spreading corruption burn, right? Like, she's got the idea that there really is some impurity to this. And I would sort of have expected the game to lean into the, like, perspective shift, like where maybe they would refer to their own blood as, like, the exalted blood. I guess there's already a holy blood in the Japanese translation for, like, the old blood. But anyway, that's sort of what I was expecting, and that's not what you get. She's like, no, my blood is impure. You're weird to want it, but I'll welcome you into the clan, and now it's just you and me, right? So, interesting that Bloodborne goes that way. I think it fits, but it's unexpected, and that's interesting. Anyway, that's all sort of a long preamble, and like I said, literally this is the Ritual Impurity rune, and I think corruption makes sense for it. It gets a little bit weird when you introduce a DLC one which literally has a description that maybe would make more sense as corruption. I can't remember off the top of my head. So it gets hard to, like, keep straight what rune you're talking about, depending on whether you're using an understanding of the Japanese or an understanding of the English. But if you're just playing the game in one language, that's not a problem. Anyway, let's get to the description here. All right, interestingly, this is one of Carol's runes, because we're getting the opening line here about how this is one of the secret letters left by copyist Carol, student of Bergenworth. Makes sense when you consider Alfred's tale about how a scholar at Bergenworth betrayed his fellows and brought forbidden blood to Cainhurst Castle. Which, also, now that I'm thinking of it, maybe there's sort of a parallel going on here between, like, the old blood as blood being brought back from the Chalice dungeons into Yharnam, and the mystery blood brought back from the scholar to Cainhurst. Interesting that there would be a forbidden blood as well as the holy old blood. Are they both from Great Ones? Very mysterious. I can't give you any answers on that front. It's just, I was editing an episode where I was talking about Alfred's lines today, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, how could I not bring that up in the episode? So I'm mentioning it now, way later, and you've probably all forgotten I even made that mistake. But this is the weird nature, again, of the way that I'm recording the series at the moment. So anyway, having cleared that up, it does make sense that this would be like one of what I call Carol's runes that Carol himself would have transcribed, because what, like, elevated Cainhurst, it was the betrayal of a Bergenworth scholar who came to them with blood. So that sort of, that stands to reason. Let's go ahead and move on to the next set of lines here in this first section. Various Carol letters given the meaning of blood exist. Ritual impurity, too, is one of them, and particularly has the meaning of a contract. So this is an oath rune, and again, I've talked about before how, like, the idea of an oath, I think, works very well in Bloodborne in the specific circumstances where it's like, okay, swear your fealty to me, I'll give you some of my blood to seal the deal, and you'll get this rune as well, and that's sort of the way that we form an agreement. That's not a contract. That's an oath, right? There's a little bit more to it than just a verbal, like, oath agreement, but it's not a formal contract, like I was saying before, like that you could contrast it with at the start of the game. So I think oath makes sense as a translation, and I think the reason we're bringing up how this one particularly has the meaning of an oath or a contract is because it's an oath rune, right? It's one of these ways that the game is acknowledging the gameplay element in its lore. So by memorizing this rune, you are in effect swearing an oath. And this is also going to feed into the online play element, because if you go online, which I never do, so I've never experienced this, but if you go online and you have this rune equipped, you are like the enemies of the people who have gone with the other oath. Well, not the other. There's two others. with one of the other oaths that you can get, which affiliates you with the Executioners. So you get to recreate the battle between the Healing Church and the Vilebloods if you want. Kind of a cool idea. I've never experienced it. So, and from what I understand, a lot of players had no idea what was even happening, right? It's a little bit too subtle, arguably. I don't know, but maybe someone who's had that experience can speak more to it. But it's a cool idea, like, as a concept. That's very neat. Anyway, let's move on to the central section here. Okay, those who are under this contract, those who are bound by this oath, are the Blood Clan of Canehurst. They are hunters of blood, and they discover ritual impurity for the sake of their queen in Deathblood, particularly in the Deathblood of Hunters. So that's another fun thing about this particular set of, this particular affiliation, right, is that you get different resources for being part. This is something that's been part of the Soulsborne games basically since Dark Souls, where there's a certain, like, association-specific resource that you can acquire by being part of, or by taking on an oath, right? And this oath rune is the way in Bloodborne that you take on an oath. So the resource that we get is ritual impurity, aka blood dregs. I've talked several times now about how ritual impurity doesn't really work as an item name. Blood dregs works great as an item name, right? So they can particularly find this sort of blood in hunters. And if I recall correctly, I think the official translation goes with the idea of echo fiends here, and I love it. It's so good, because what's cool, or not what's cool, it is cool, but what's like a defining thing about hunters as opposed to other sorts of people who are around that would make their blood different than others? Their blood is enriched with the will of the slain, of the dead. So it's hunters who have like a high concentration of blood echoes circulating through them. They course their veins, and something about hunters having lots of blood echoes going through their body means their blood is more likely to produce these sorts of ritually impure things, right? This blood dreg. Bear that in mind, because that's going to be important. Anyway, let's move on to the final section here. The final section here gets back to the online play mechanics I was talking about. However, ritual impurity, the rune, because it's in quotation marks, is also a taboo among the Healing Church. So watch out for the Executioner squad, right? This is to differentiate from the like single family line of Executioners that built up the Executioner's gloves. You have the Executioner squad, the Executioners of the Healing Church, who they don't do the job of execution, they just do a massacre. They go off to Canehurst and kill Vilebloods. So this is, again, getting back to that online play element, whereas if you swear this oath, you're going to get blood dregs, but gotta watch out for the Executioners, because they're coming for your, like, lives. Also, again, I think I've probably said this already, but furthering the idea of, like, vampires, right? They want something very specific in the blood. They're hunters of blood specifically. So, having done all that and having shown off the new weapons, we now see, basically, I have given you the goal and the means, right? We're going to go out and try and get a blood dreg by using this new weapon. And blood dregs work very differently in 1.00 than they do in later versions of the game, but there is one specific NPC who I've deliberately left alive, who should still be around, I hope, and should still drop us a blood dreg, hanging out in Old Yarnum. So that's where I am going to go. I think just the regular Old Yarnum without using the sort of back entrance is going to be the way to go. I'll see you there. Oh! Look at that! It just gave me blood dregs. Ritual impurity of blood, right? That's the item description there. Okay. I don't know why that happened. I guess it retroactively recognized that I killed Jura? 1.00, everybody. That's not how that's supposed to work at all. Alright, well, I still left that one particular hunter alive, so I'm still curious what sort of effect I can get from that, from doing it that way. Also, I'm a little bit worried that I'm going through Old Yarnum here. Nope. I can see, yep. I heard the one sneaking up on me. You can see how little damage these things do to me. I'm worried that I'm not doing more damage to them. So I think I left my blood vials in a pretty healthy state, so I might start getting messages from maxing them out. Oh, but of course, we've got the other bug going on where I'm down to 20, where I should have, however many. I should have 23. Well, I killed them both in 2 hits. That's not that bad. And of course, my beasthood is going up, right? So I get more powerful with every attack. That's a certain aspect of the beast claws that I've never really gotten to appreciate. Because again, it's always like this weapon is so much of a hassle to get that I never bother to like build around it. I haven't built around it this time either, but I can use it, and I'm going to. So I can get something of a new experience with this game. I could just drop... There's our prey right there. I could just drop... Don't want to, though. Let's go around. Take the long way. Yeah. I don't know if I really finished the thought, but I'm worried that I can't one-shot enemies all the way back from Old Yarnum with this particular weapon. I think it might be showing off the fact that I do not have... I do not have the most robust version of a build for this weapon. But at the same time, it is getting the job done. I mean, worst case scenario, I can just switch back later. Now, is there... Oh, I guess I've just never... Yeah, there's the max blood vials. I guess I just never got this. Yeah, well, some antidotes for me. Isn't there a faster way down here? I'm sure there's a faster way down. I'm not gonna bother with it, though. I'm gonna go the long way around. Is my... Okay, good. My lantern is on. Boy, this section is so different when you don't have to worry about Jira attacking you. You've got all these, like, ingrained habits from having to dodge bullets when I'm around here. And they don't matter. I can just run out here and fight all these beasts. Or ignore them. Whatever I want. Oh, I thought that was an actual beast. Statue fooled me! Alright. Now there's a bunch back here. I'm trying to, like, see if I can maintain beasthood status for long enough for it to really make a difference, and I'm not being very successful. That's okay. It's doing enough work on its own. What is the point of this attack, I wonder? Okay, hello. Oh, it's doing pretty good work against this guy. Yeah, hit me with your gun. I'm super powerful now. I waited to fight you for a reason. Ooh, he got around it. Ha! There you go. Defeated. Now, am I going to get a blood dreg? There it is. Got the blood dreg. Also got a bunch of bone marrow ash. Boy, I've been getting a lot of things recently that would be awesome in the other playthrough that I have going. But, sadly, I do not. Alright, so I just want to stand somewhere where I'm not going to get attacked, because we're going to further extend the, like, item reading nature of this particular episode by not reading the materials, by reading... We got to find the blood dreg. Here we go. This thing that I just got. Okay, I do want the image up. Alright, so, first things first. If you, like me, aren't very visually inclined and have never really looked at this image, I would encourage you to look at this image. It is very suggestive. Right, we have... it looks quite a bit like inside that, like, red field, you have a bunch of sperm. And that is not a coincidence, right? And this is where some of that sort of Japanese meaning of, like, impurity, ritually unclean, can sort of come back into things and be relevant. This is why I think the Japanese can call this ritual impurity of blood, because the concept of kegare, or ritual impurity, ties in so well with what this item is, at least as far as I understand it. Hi everyone, Editing Matt here, stepping in with some more carefully weighed words about this topic than Gameplay Matt managed. Now, I do not have an incredibly nuanced understanding of how this concept works in Shinto, but a quick reference of the Japanese article on Wikipedia informs me that things commonly understood to bring about this ritual pollution include death, sickness, childbirth, sex, women, wounds, and excrement, as well as things related to them. Given that this impurity of blood here is directly tied in with sexual reproduction via the image, the concept seems like a good fit right off the bat. Oh, and incidentally, if like me, visual information isn't your forte, it might interest you to know that on a cut item called the Queenly Blood, blood dregs appear under the different Japanese name Chinose. Here, the first two characters still work out to of blood, but the final kanji can be used specifically to refer to seminal fluid. Again, based on the categories I read out earlier, this seems to me like just the sort of thing that would fall under the definition of kegare. Nor is that this item's only connection to the concept. As we'll see when we read the full description, hunters are the best sources of these items, and that's likely due to the vast quantity of the will of the dead in their blood, meaning we can also see a relation to death in this item. And finally, while I haven't been able to find a direct source for this, blood itself probably also qualifies as a ritual pollutant, given its association with wounds. So it seems to me that this item is triply impure according to the Shinto tradition. Perhaps that can help explain why it's not just the Healing Church that refers to the Vilebloods as vile or corrupt, but Annalise herself, because despite the origin of the Vilebloods supposedly lying in forbidden blood brought by a Bergenworth scholar, she has her followers actively seeking out this ritually impure element of blood. Of course, as Gameplay Matt can explain, all these cultural implications end up leaving the translators between a rock and a hard place. But again, I think they're really stuck in English because you don't have that same cultural set of associations, and also, right, it's just the undesirable part of blood, right? So, and you have to come up with an item name. So I think blood dregs is fine, but you do get a little bit of extra nuance out of the Japanese here. How exactly that nuance ties in specifically with the lore, because it's not like the blood dregs are what make the Vilebloods vile 100%, because the origin of the Vilebloods is the forbidden blood from the chalices. Maybe the forbidden blood involved blood dregs? I don't know. We don't know anything about it. All we know is that it existed, and a scholar brought it to Canehurst. So, maybe? I don't know. Theorize as you will. Anyway, let's go ahead. I've talked long enough about the concept and the image and the title. Let's get to the actual description. Right, so these first two lines run together. So, disgusting thing that the hunters of blood, who are the Canehurst clan, right, the Canehurst blood clan, are said to discover in the death blood of humans. Oh, and I was remembering things wrong when I was talking about the description before. This is where the official translation uses the term echo fiends. Still love it. It's just, you can apply my thoughts on that from before to here now. Because the central section here, this one single line, is talking about how it is said that there is a high chance of it being harbored in those addicted to dying wills of blood, bequeathed blood will, blood echoes. In other words, hunters themselves, hunters in particular. Right? So it is echo fiends, that is, in particular, hunters who have a high probability of harboring this impurity of blood. And again, right, this is where I want to get back to the idea of it tying in with, that I was talking about with the, visual image here, right? Because what are blood echoes, right? They're the will of the slain. You can sort of think of them at like souls, right? They are the echoing will of those who have passed away that are harbored in blood, right? They're a way in which a person lives on after their death, kind of like a persistent life force that can be harbored in blood and can be channeled in the dream to enhance the power of one who is possibly living, possibly, right, a spirit, right? Enhance the, hunter, essentially. But if you think about it as people who have a lot of the life force of the slain circulating in their body are more likely to have this specific type of thing in their blood, which is what? It's a sort of form of life in the blood itself. So there is a logic that comes around here, right? You have the idea of the life force and reproductive fluids coming together in this idea that you have life in the blood. So it makes sense in that way that it would specifically be hunters who have the blood echoes that would have the blood dregs. Anyway, that's all. And then, of course, just to say, right, the Echo Fiend is even less of a leap on this description than it was back in the one that I was thinking of, right? Because Chudokusha is like one who's addicted to, right? So like you're fiending for the blood echoes, you're an Echo Fiend, right? So perfect. I love it. That part of the translation is just perfect, I think. Anyway, let's move on to the final portion of this description, and I can't believe this. That's all we're going to have talked about this entire episode, because it's been too long. But anyway, we'll finish this out. Therefore, they hunt hunters, and the Queen Annalise likely sips the offered up ritual impurity. Right, so we're getting the idea that the Vileblood Queen Annalise, who has shared some of her blood with the Vilebloods to extend her clan, is gaining these blood dregs herself, presumably because they go out and hunt for more blood dregs, and then she takes them in. And why? Let's go to the final line here. For the purpose of the clan's dearest wish to hold a child of blood within those arms. Those is probably her, right? So she wants to hold a child of blood within her arms. And that is the dearest wish of the, like, ritually impure blood clan, the Vilebloods. They want to have a child of blood. What does that mean? I don't really know. It's very unclear. It sort of makes me think, because I've tried to think through these things before, and I haven't been very successful, but it sort of makes me think that maybe there's sort of a move towards, like, an immaculate conception going on here. And come to think of it, there's another one of those sort of moments of immaculate conception in Bloodborne, right? Because if you go down the route that I did not go down, and you don't become the, like, willing collaborator of Imposter Yusefka, if instead you send people to Erden Chapel, Ariana, who is of the Cainhurst bloodline, essentially has what seems like an immaculate conception because Erden has a liaison with her, and in doing so, right, my current theory is that Erden is itself a form of vibrations that is, like, at its true form, like, most truly represented through the medium of blood. And if that's true, then isn't Ariana's child a child of blood? Maybe that is what Vileblood Queen Annalise is going for without Erden. Right? Erden is a way for Ariana to have an immaculate conception. Maybe the blood dregs, which, as we said before, like reproductive juices in here from the life force of the slain, she's trying to produce a child without any other partner than just this sort of life force of the slain. Maybe that's what's the goal, right? A form of immaculate conception. Would that result in a higher level of being? If you could have this sort of reproduction without a human male or a great one of any kind, would that be like a higher level being? Is that a way to ascend? I don't know what the aim is after conceiving the child of blood. I don't know what exactly a child of blood is. This is the best take I've got, I think, right now, is that it's about this idea of immaculate conception. Very interesting stuff to think about. But anyway, that's like just in terms of the quest line, right? You go out, you find these hunters in the world, you kill them, you take the blood dregs, you turn them into Annalise, and you can get questline rewards. We're going to go get some of those questline rewards and maybe do some things that Vilebloods Queen Annalise would not appreciate so much next time. But for now, we've been going on long enough, I think. Thank you all very much for joining me. I'm going to call an end to my hunt for the evening, but I wish all of you good hunting. Okay, all right. I know what I'm beat. Oh, I wonder what this will look like. Good hunting! As I salute you with my beast claw. Thanks for watching, everyone.